introduce myself, my name is Cindy Beabout. I am a program support specialist for ECPL, the center up in Arlington Heights, out of Chicago. I am also an Instructional Leaders COP lead, so I coordinate and have several COPs for instructional leaders. I was a coach for many years, and my work in early childhood goes back, I'm not even going to tell you, but it's over 30 years, closer to over, never mind. And I was an administrator for a PFAE program and for another PFA program, overseeing many sites as the instructional leader, and I was the coach over several different counties in southern Illinois. And then I moved into this role where I'm actually working with the instructional leaders and working with the teachers, and I just love it. So I'm so glad you're here, and I am here with two of my colleagues who I coached a while back, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
I am Wendy Wright. I've been an instructional leader for 7, 8 years, one of the two, I'm not really sure where I'm at, 7 or 8 years. I was in the classroom back and forth between districts for about 10 years within our special ed cooperative. So as you see on the screen, we're from Eastern Illinois Area Special Education. That's a special ed cooperative that covers 8 counties. So we travel a lot. We get a lot of car time. When we talk to Cindy, it's typically on the phone, in the car, on the road. When we're at meetings, there is another instructional leader with Amy and I. Between the 3 of us, we have 34 PFA classrooms. 2 are all-day PFA, the rest are just the half PFA, and we divided those up basically geographically, closest to where we live, not closest to where the office is, because between Amy and Holly and I, we're a good hour and 15 minutes away from each other, and our farthest classroom is about an hour and 15 minutes away from our home base. So, lots of traveling.
It's a big chunk of the state that they cover. It's a big chunk on, what do you call that? Middle Central, what do you call
East
that?
Central?
East Central?
Yeah. My
East
house is
Central,
about
Illinois.
12 miles from the Indiana border. I'm about 12 miles from Terre Haute, Indiana. So.
Yes.
I'm Amy Durdel. I've been in this role for 11 years, and previous to that I was in a PFA classroom. And Wendy covered the rest.
Yeah.
We do the same thing, just in different districts.
So here's what our hope is for today. These are our objectives. That you will gain insight into how an administrator's support makes a difference for very effective instructional leadership. Because that's an important relationship there. You're going to learn the 6 steps of the ECPL coaching cycle, because coaching is a cyclical process that goes over and over during the course of the school year. That cycle that it supports teaching excellence, and you will learn how instructional leaders support teaching excellence through strength-based and this word, data-driven professional development. Okay, so here, instructional leaders, what is it? So I kind of want to, some of this you might already know. This is actually taken out of, can you hear me when I'm facing that way? Is it working all right? This is actually taken directly out of the ISBE website. There's a program description for instructional leader as just an example. And this quote here I think is really helpful. The instructional leader will support classroom education staff, teachers, and teacher assistants. So it sees both of them as teachers. And if you're in the Eckers session earlier, that's true of Eckers too. Paraprofessionals are teachers. They don't bear all the same responsibilities, but they are teaching because they are with children. Through embedded professional development, and that's underlined because we're really going to focus on what that means to have embedded professional development practices and individualized professional development plans. And these are used to refine teacher excellence in practice, in the action, in the classroom. Key activities in that, the descriptors, which you would find on that sample, is knowledgeable of curriculum and assessment, and supports instructional quality and professional development, observation, and coaching. Is that me? Was the other one supposed to be you? No, it's all me. Okay. Embedded professional development. When I first became an instructional leader, I didn't really know what that meant. I just kind of made it up as I went because it was like I had to get the snack to the classroom, I had to make sure the materials were in the classroom, I had to make sure that the classroom had the equipment, that it was set up according to Eckers, and so I felt like I was just really this multi-hatted person that was just putting out fires and making sure all the bases were covered. And I really didn't have a concept of how to support teaching excellence. Teacher went to school to learn how to be a teacher. I mean, we all know how to teach, so do your job, right? So that was kind of the attitude I had at one point. And then I came to learn that, now if this one here is a quote from the compliance checklist number 30, which all PFAE programs are obliged to. So if you're a PFA, you're not obliged to it. But I learned there are so many PFA programs that are rising to the occasion to support their teachers with a coach or instructional leader, or are taking some of that role upon themselves. So what is it? To provide embedded professional development, is dedicated to supporting instructional quality, and cultivates and maintains a professional learning community. Those are the things that PFAE programs are obliged to. And it is an excellence in practice for all programs.
So embedded professional development, what is it? Obviously, it's going to be professional development that is embedded within your day. It's in real time, in the moment. As an instructional leader, your relationships are key. Your relationships are difficult. From an administrative standpoint to your instructional leader, you've got to have a lot of trust in those people. You've also got to understand that there's going to be confidentiality between you and between the instructional leader and the teacher, that they're not always going to be able to come back to you and say, this is what's going on in the classroom, this is how this teacher feels. You've got to give your trust to your teacher as an instructional leader. So, relationships is key. Your relationship has to start with your teachers way before the coaching cycle even begins. So.
Don't you love the smiles here? Look at the connection. That picture is really showing. Here, there's a chair right here in the middle. There is such a connection going on there. We've got some one-on-one going, one-on-one correspondence. I think they're having a game with counting. And it's just beautiful to see how the social emotional component here is just resonating. It's excellence in practice.
So at the top you're going to see the actual definition of embedded professional development. Still a cycle that's ongoing that you're going to repeat after you have the steps down. For the teacher, what that's going to look like during a cycle is they're going to complete a needs survey, and that you can tailor to your own district. When Cindy first started with us, she had her own teacher needs survey that had it mapped out. The teacher says, okay, I think I need help in these areas. They kind of rate themselves. That data kicks back to you, and you say, okay, this is where I think they're going to need a goal, but you sometimes will find where you think they need to make a goal and where they want to set a goal is two different places. They're going to submit evidence that supports their goal as you go through the process. As the instructional leader, you are the one that leads the process. This is the most difficult part for me. I am a leader by nature, thanks to my father. But I am a get it done leader. So I walk into the room and I say, okay, the room's on fire, how do we put the fire out? I have 3 boys at home, I walk in the house literally sometimes is on fire, and I say, how do I put it out? Cindy has taught us to ask questions, practice the pause, get the teacher to lead the process without actually leading the process, if that makes sense. We're going to complete those focused observations, so we go in minute by minute, what's the teacher doing, what are the students doing, so they can map out their day and get some data from those. Then together with the teacher and the instructional leader, we're going to reflect on that needs assessment. We're also going to collaborate on what areas they want to target and improve, if it's what we see as a need also. That's a bonus, but sometimes, like I said, it can be different. We're going to create and develop a goal and then an action plan with specific steps and dates. And we're going to participate in those reflective conversations. You can video, that's a big thing. The instructional leader that was with us in years prior, she loved using video. Coming from the classroom, I did not want to see a video of myself. Like, it's hard to listen to myself. It's hard to watch how I am with kids. Not that I'm bad with kids, but it's a very difficult thing for you to watch when you know that they're judging you and you're potentially doing something wrong that you want to try to fix. For the administrator, the best thing that you can do is offer them time. If you're a PFA classroom where you've got that break in the middle between classes, be intentional about that planning. Be intentional about how you get a sub, if you get a sub, so they can work together, which I know subs are few and far between, but the best thing you can give us is time.
I just want to add one thing. In your program, you got a QR code, and that QR code will lead you to the documents that we will be referencing. She referenced using an instructional leader needs survey, and you can access that by going on there. You can actually look at one. It's not like you might want to use that exact survey, but sometimes these things will help give you some food for support. Also embedded in this, I'll show you where the hot link is. I won't use it today, but when you can access through the hot link that's also in the PowerPoint to the survey that you all have. So there are tools there, so we're talking about things like, okay, so how would I make a needs survey? We do have samples on that.
So professional learning communities. This is something, can mean different things. After going through the coaching cycle with Cindy, she connected us to one, and it has been very beneficial for us. So several of you have a new COP going on. Very, very beneficial. Make sure you hop onto those. So we meet with the southern part of the state for our COP.
Is this the right slide? Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep. And so we share ideas with each other, what we're doing in classrooms, they share with us, and it's a great learning tool for us. Like we talked about with the needs assessment survey, we did create our own. We created one for the teachers, and then we also created one for the paraprofessionals in the classroom. And this is the data we look at to help try and set that goal with them. And you're gonna have those seasoned teachers who are like, I'm good, I don't need a goal, no worries. But then we go back, look at the data, and get them to see, you could work on this, or you could work on that. So as an instructional leader, it's important to collaborate with other instructional leaders, gather that data, and then discuss it. And then, Wendy talked about the trust between the teacher and the instructional leader. You can share some things with the administrators, but some things needs to stay between the teacher and the instructional leader to work on that goal.
Okay, so the first step is going to be that relationship building. And I kind of want to paint in the audience, if you are an instructional leader, and this is going to throw Cindy off because she's like, oh, we weren't going to ask that question. But Amy and I, as we go in, we do different things. We cannot walk down the hallway and visit one classroom after another classroom after another classroom. I get in my car, I drive 20 minutes to one of my classrooms, I stay for a couple hours, I drive 30 minutes, I go to another classroom, which means they don't have that support either. So I have to tell them what this classroom is doing or make different suggestions about this class so they have that collaboration without being right down the hallway. One of the things that Amy and I go in and do at the beginning of the year, tell me how you want to set your room up. What are you thinking with your block area? We kind of build a relationship there to where we can go in and we can make adjustments Eckers-wise, and they can gain knowledge from that. We do different things like Cindy said, bring them snack every month. Since we are spread out, the easiest thing that we can do is go to Walmart, physically shop for their snack and take it to them. They think we're just bringing them snack, but the reality of it is we're in there informally, starting conversations. As your instructional leader, relationship to your administrator, they've got to give you that power. You have to be able to make some decisions without consulting them all the time. That's difficult. And I always say there's a cap to the ability of questions that I can answer, and usually that stops at where I have to spend money, and I can't do that. So, okay. So these you guys can kind of just read expectations of the teacher's role. Again, those positive relationships, you're going to actively engage. If you want to make the best of everybody's time is short. You want to be intentional about your conversations. Help get information with them as quickly as possible. Making it meaningful is the best. Apply your new teaching practices. Be present. That's the biggest thing. Like, don't just make it a sit and get. Like, really listen to them. Understand where they're coming from. Understand what they need help with. So, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I took Amy's slide.
It's all good. I'll just
See,
take her
leader
slide.
by nature.
So expectations of the coach or the instructional leader is you want to build that positive relationship. Through the coaching cycle that we went through, we have found connect rather than correct. So make that connection, and it's going to get easier buy-in from the teacher. If you connect with them, show you care, really listen to them. Be trustworthy, maintain that confidentiality. Wendy talked about actively listening rather than just letting them talk and you say, okay. Really actively listen. Focus on their strengths and emerging skills. Develop individualized goals and action plans with the teacher, and analyze multiple data sources. A lot of data. You have the Eckers, you have their evaluations, you have, depending on what system you use, ELS, TS goals. You can look at that data to help start setting up a goal.
I think one of the most important things is you don't always have to have professional talk. How are your kids? What do they do? What sports are they in? Like Amy, that's what I have learned the most from Amy. Like, she goes in and she builds that informal relationship with her teachers. Like, they're calling and texting her about different things outside of work. So you want them to feel like they can reach out to you about anything, not just professionally, because they're having a bad day, but it might not be because their kids or their students is what making them have that bad day. It might be something at home. We want them to feel like today's not a day I can meet. It's just not a good day. So those kind of relationships are just as important.
So here we've got the expectations of the administrator. If you look at the QR code and look at the samples that are presented there for you, the key to the I know you guys can read, so I don't want to just read this whole thing. I just want to point out to what is the most important factor for you as an administrator is that relationship you have with your instructional leader and the relationship that you have with the teacher. Going back a few slides, I'm just going to, right up here, see here, the relationship is established before entering the cycle. So what is missing here is that when you say the relationship is established, what relationship? There is a lot of relationships going on. There's the relationship between the instructional leader and the administrator, between the instructional leader and the teacher, between the instructional leader and the paraprofessional, between the paraprofessional and the paraprofessional, and what about the children? But that relationship of trust is not only true of the instructional leader to the teacher, it's also crucial for the administrator to the instructional leader. Let me get back to the right slide, and I want to say a little more. Is that the right one? Yeah. This is crucial because in my work with instructional leaders, where I meet in groups with instructional leaders, the most difficult thing for them to overcome is when they are told that they must go fix something. The administrator went and saw something, maybe on an Eckers report, maybe in a walkthrough, and then takes it to the instructional leader and is told to fix it. Now the instructional leader must abide by his or her boss, and now is put in what kind of relationship with the teacher? It's what?
Authority.
Authority.
Boss.
It's an authority position, which is totally inappropriate for an instructional leader. So if you're an administrator who has to sometimes, there's a lot of PFA in here. You are administrators, those of you who are administrators of PFA and you don't have an instructional leader, this is a very big challenge for you. Because you have to wear your administrator hat and you must support your teacher as a coach. And what the instructional leader does is private, and it does not become part of the teacher's professional report. It is personal professional development for that teacher. So your ability, so those that are PFAE, or those PFAs that have instructional leaders, give the instructional leader the privacy to build that relationship. If there's something that concerns you, identify it and allow them to embrace that problem by bringing data, informing conversation, using the tools at their disposal to do it with a strength-based approach. And I think if there's one thing I really want administrators to take away, it's that, because it's so hard for me when I'm in these COPs with instructional leaders and they feel completely powerless. So how do you empower them? That is probably what I really want to be your takeaway. So those of you who are administrators, which is most of the people in this room, what is the biggest challenge for you when it comes to those relationships?
Time.
Time. Who said that? That is so true. That the ability for time to go in, to observe, to be patient with the process, right? Because you need things done now. To be patient with the process is a challenge because time keeps moving along. That's a big one. Anybody else?
Question, how much time are we giving? Let's just say this 3 months. Is that long enough to see the change? And if the change doesn't happen?
So if there is an instructional leader, if you're in a program that has somebody working with the teachers and they are going through the process, the cycle of that an instructional leader goes through with the teacher can take 6 weeks or more, and then you revisit, and then you may bump up to another actionable strategy on that same goal to move it forward more. In a year's time, myself, between 1 and 3 goals. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Between 1 and 3 goals can be accomplished. Because we're not talking about sit and get training. Sit and get training is fairly ineffective. You come away from that with maybe 0 to 1% actual impact in the classroom. When you have job-embedded professional development with an instructional leader, with a coach, then you have work in the action. It's embedded in what's happening in the classroom. It is working on culture change within the classroom. It can be working on knowledge growth for the teacher. It's not a fast process, but it's much deeper and more meaningful. Does that answer your question? Sort of, kind of. It's not the answer you wanted.
And if you've got, so for example, one of the goals that we had with one of our teachers when we were working with Cindy was a simple transition. Going back from lunch to the classroom, how can I get better control of my class during this transition?
We spent a whole semester on that.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally,
It was more than that.
because you don't want to say, okay, we need to talk about this because when your kids come back from lunch, like they're a dumpster fire and they're running from one spot to the next, and
It was a videotape, and
Yeah.
we videotaped the process and allowed her to see what was not working right, and then helping her brainstorm solutions. But she took ownership of what was happening. And I gotta say, to have the administrator support you have of that building, that we were able to do all that, I mean, here's one. Provided protected time, coverage, the teacher and the coach meeting. So after doing the videotape, we had to have time to sit down together. We had to have time for her to look at that video and really talk about why is this happening? What can we do? What do you think is happening? What do you think the children are thinking? What do they understand? And then she worked through it, and it really changed things dramatically.
I will say that at that time, we were working with Cindy. Cindy was working with other programs on other things. Now, if it was just this instructional leader and that teacher, the process could have maybe went a little faster, but we were, okay, I will go video tomorrow. I'll have her watch it Thursday. We'll circle back around with Cindy on Tuesday. You know what I mean? So we could have probably sped up the process a little faster. But it's definitely, you want the teacher to realize that what the issue is. And do you need to see the improvement from the teacher? Do you need to see the improvement from the students? Do you need to see improvement from their environment? Like, what's the root cause of the issue that the teacher's having? So
I also think the length of it will depend on how quickly they come up with the ideas. Like if we would have videotaped first thing, I think it would have went a lot quicker.
Yeah.
But again, teachers don't like to be videotaped, and I get it. I was there, same. Don't videotape me, thank you. But once she
It's
saw
powerful if you can
like
get
watching
teachers
it,
to agree that
it made a
it's so-
huge difference, and then it was done.
Yeah.
So if you find the right strategy right at the beginning, it goes a lot quicker. But coming to that strategy, you don't know until you're diving into it and figuring it out.
And sometimes with a teacher, you don't know where to start. Like, you just have to give a suggestion. Like, they're coming to you and saying, my morning class is just a mess. Like, I don't even know. So you have to be specific and, okay, ask the targeted questions. What is the most difficult part? Tell me where you're struggling the most. And so if they say, I can't get my kids to focus on large group. Okay, well, let's chat about your large group. How long is it? What are you doing? Like, different things like that, so.
And then we go in and do that focused observation minute by minute. And then you talk about that with, which we're going to talk about later, is you use wondering statements instead of saying, if you would just shorten your large group, you'll be fine. You have to say, I'm wondering if you would shorten your group time, if that would make a difference. They're focused for 5 minutes and then they're done. They're crawling on the carpet. So let's shorten that. Instead of telling them what to do, you use the wondering statement. I'm wondering, so you're leading them to what you want done.
And so, the very first thing she said, I want to just backtrack to where you started. You said you go take a minute by minute observation. So she gathered data. She then brings the data to the teacher and then starts helping the teacher look at her data and asking these wondering statements so that it's open-ended questioning, trying to help the teacher embrace and take on the change herself or himself. So I wanted to have a moment for you. You know, it's just sitting for 90 minutes is kind of a long time. I forgot we weren't going to have tables, so I call it table discussion. So let's call it line discussion or neighbor discussion. Let's call it neighbor discussion. So just take a minute. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to speak with your neighbor, person behind you, however you feel comfortable, and how do you, in your role, intentionally build relationships with your instructional leader coach? How do you build relationships with your teacher, your parapro, right? And then we'll just popcorn out, okay? I won't call anybody. We'll just popcorn out your response. Okay, you've got 3 minutes to chat amongst yourselves with these questions. There was a lot of robust conversation there. That's wonderful. I hope that you had something meaningful that really like some aha moment. Can anybody share? So, we're just going to popcorn it out. Anybody want to share? How do you intentionally build relationships with anyone you want to choose? Instructional leader, teachers, paraprofessionals. Was one more interesting than another? Anybody?
I can go. I hold monthly listening sessions with the paraprofessionals only.
Whoa, can you hear him? Monthly listening sessions with paraprofessionals only. Tell me about that.
So it's actually a response because when I first got there, I wasn't listening, so I had to like repair that relationship, and it's worked really great. So like basically once a month, for an hour, I just sit and I just listen like, what are your needs? And they just tell me their needs. It can be something about professional development needs, or it can be something as simple as, hey, we need more. I need gloves for changing kids. You know, anything.
Wow, that is so powerful. What I really want to take away from what he just said is that first he realized he was not listening and he needed to repair that relationship. And he then, what did you call it? Developed listening sessions with his paraprofessionals. That's powerful. And what did that do to the relationships?
It really I think it strengthened the relationship not only with me and them, but the teacher and the paraprofessional.
Wow. Can you hear that in the back? It strengthened both his relationship with the para and the teacher's relationship with the para. That's really powerful stuff. Anybody else?
I just wanted to ask, what time of day does he do that?
After time factor.
Once a month, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. So, yeah.
So if you get a sub.
Do you provide a sub?
We haven't. No, I don't need a sub because they don't really start until like 8:45. And then I have other paraprofessionals in the building that kind of like cover for 15 minutes, and then I finish up 15 minutes there. So yeah.
So you float some staff around so that you can get those paras together in a room
Yeah,
with you.
because I'm in an elementary building, there's other pairs that are available in the elementary building, so they can like, yeah.
That makes sense.
When we started this process with Cindy, that was our biggest thing. How are we going to fit this into a day where we don't have to get 10 subs with the teachers that we're meeting with? So that, I mean, the reality of it is like you've got to make it work for you and what fits. So maybe that's like instead of in person, like maybe it's email me what you need this week. You know what I mean? Like you still want to build those relationships. You still want to hear what they've got, but you just have to tailor it to your own specific needs to figure out what works for sure.
Real quick, just continuing your part. I'm just curious. Are you really, I mean, not when I say really, you're just listening. You're not offering any type of feedback. You're not doing anything. You're just strictly just listening to what
Very
they
little
have.
feedback, but I'm literally just listening and taking notes. And like just getting, and then I'm following up on things we talked about last time and just saying, you asked for this last time, this is what I got done. So it's really just me just listening.
Truly just listening, nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you
And I have a lot to
powerful
say,
that
so
is?
so it's not like just quiet space. I have a lot to say.
Gotcha.
So you know.
Such restraint. You know what? Such restraint to have your administrator say, I just want to listen. Yes.
This was, guys, for you, the administrator or the coach?
Administrator.
Administrator, okay, thank you.
He's the school principal?
No, the early childhood
Early
administrator.
childhood
For the district, yeah.
administrator. Okay. Yes.
How do you keep that session productive and not a session of
Great.
complaint and negative and have a
That's
vicious cycle where they feed off of each other negativity? How do you keep it constructive?
It's really never entered that space as much. I don't know. I kind of we actually had meetings at the very beginning of the school year, just framing around like what are our beliefs around this work in early childhood, and that was really helpful to like really focus like what we need to get done. But also I guess it's a mixture of the group. I have a mixture of very experienced paraprofessionals and some that are newer, and that sometimes kind of helps. So I don't have an answer for that.
I would say you can do group norms. I mean, that works really well. Like in
Yeah.
any situation like that, just bring people to the table and say, I wasn't listening, that's on me. I want to have the listening session, this is me fixing it. Like, but what are our norms so it doesn't become a bitch fest, or essentially what everyone wants to say.
Wonderful.
But like that's what it will become if you don't set those norms up.
Yes,
Yeah.
from at the
Here we go.
beginning. And that can be a
say
pretty
too, like, if you, I don't know, I've had a different experience, so we did a lot of, like, teacher negotiation contracts, and one of the strategies that we learned was called, like, interspace bargaining, and so when I was meeting with the paraprofessionals, we used that kind of framework where we said, okay, like, what is, like, all the gripes, get them all out there, like, give them an opportunity to just gripe and write them all down, and then start to say, okay, out of all of these, let's pick one to kind of problem solve through. And so, you know, they can pick the one, you do the dots where they all go around and like put the dot, and whichever one has the most dots, that's the one you start with. And then say, okay, like what are your interests in getting this solved? And here's my interest in getting it solved. And together, let's work for a solution for that. So putting it back to say, okay, we agreeing that we're gonna work on this problem, whether it's, you know, I'm not getting my break, or, you know, the teacher isn't respecting me, whatever it is, but then work together to come up with possible solutions. And then the interest-based bargaining is FBA, like is it feasible, is it beneficial, and is it acceptable? And then we develop a consensus in the room, and that really was powerful in changing the culture and climate in my building, like having a consensus of, yeah, you know, maybe I don't agree with it, but I can support it. That was really powerful. So that's just one
That
strategy
is
to
so
get them
beautiful.
together.
So, and this just really, all of this is building one on the other, because it's about listening, empowering, and really taking seriously what they have to say, and really not being judgmental. I mean, you're being so respectful to even have a whole process that we're going to move this forward, and we're going to set a goal. We're going to have actionable strategies, and we're all going to decide on it together.
Yeah.
That's
they,
awesome.
They were part of the solution, instead of
Yeah,
just
they were
expecting the
part of
administrator
the
to fix it,
solution.
like you're part of the solution too, like this is our problem.
Yeah, beautiful, very beautiful.
Just real quick,
So,
I just wanted to say about the listening sessions, one more thing, I'm so sorry.
no, you're
Make sure you
good.
can get a quick win within 48 hours. That was something that I really focused on.
Say that again?
Get a quick win within 48 hours. So I brought them, they're talking about hand sanitizer. I got the hand sanitizer the next day. So do
Ah.
something within 48 hours to follow through in your listening.
Follow through is
Was it
intentional, that
always
is
group,
so
or did they just
intentional.
come and go as they pleased in that hour?
Say, it was a group.
Always group?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Sorry.
No, this is what needs to happen here. Learning from each other, you are professionals. And when we're talking about the very first step here, relationships. And if we've got good ideas in this group, we need to hear them. Yes, like somebody else back here.
So how do you work out a situation where they want you to have the solution and they're not opening up?
Well, and that's probably a topic for another time, because if they are not, there must be, like, there's something else there. If they're wanting you to solve it, there's something else in the relationship that they're not feeling secure about. So there's more going on there. If somebody's saying, no, I want you to solve the problem, when a teacher's not wanting to take ownership and just wants you to fix it, there must be some other stressors. There must be something overwhelmed. There's probably something deeper rooted there. So I mean, so that's another topic. But listening to that and respecting that and saying, I hear you, and let's sit down together and talk about it is probably the way to handle it. Not just give answers or give solutions, because we have to be a team.
And that's where you can use those wondering statements. If you have an idea how to solve it, be like, I'm wondering if you would do this, what would happen? So using that wondering statement to throw it out
Good
there
point.
and get them to buy
Open-ended.
back into it.
Should there be boundaries? Like, you know, like his suggestion is great, but even coming, like if we set up something like that, should there be like boundaries? You know how you want to be open to all your teachers' ideas and concerns, but then sometimes it could get a little,
Well, I
You
think
know,
what
so-
Eric said earlier about setting norms, I think is the answer there. Setting norms and expectations, just like we have expectations for our children. I always find that in every conversation I realize this is all parallel to what we expect teachers to do with children, you know? It's a parallel process. The children need to know the expectations, and the teachers need to know, and you need to know, we each need to know what is expected of the other.
And something with that, if it's like out of bounds, whatever, you can bring in the data. Because of
Yes.
this can't happen.
And that leads us to where we are right now. That was a good segue. So Amy, here we are with use data to identify the needs.
So the second step of the coaching process is to review and summarize the data. So this is where you're going to look at that teacher needs assessment. You're going to look at the parent needs assessment. But not only that, Like if you have a classroom of kiddos who are struggling to count to 10, then look at that other data, the ELS, the Teaching Strategies Gold, and you can come up with a goal for that as well. How are you going to get those kids to count to 10? So it just depends on what the goal is going to be, what data you're going to use.
And so what does the administrator do with the data? So we've got a lot of administrators in here. What do you do with the data? Yes,
Think about next year's professional development.
think about professional development, what you're going to provide for your teachers. Yes.
We use goals, and I've taken, when we first got out of COVID, we were looking at fine motor skills. And then we would meet as a group.
And how did you choose fine motor skills?
Because our assessment team, early childhood assessment team found,
They use data to
he wants to give everybody minutes, but we try to rein it in. And what can we do in the classroom? And so then we would set up a grid, and every teacher would put in their favorite fine motor activities and how they could simplify it for some kids and extend it for others.
Nice.
And then we would do that every late start that we would have. We would just
Is that a
adding
weekly
to that.
thing, or that's
monthly?
a monthly late start day? You use that monthly late start day to use the information that you got from the data from the gold to set goals with your teachers for what they're going to
Try
do.
to get that improvement. And
Yes.
that took about 2 years, and then
Wow.
we moved to literacy. And now that's
A
what
different
we're doing
group
now.
goal for the program each year, and they base that on, and that's for the whole group. So we've talked a lot about individualized embedded professional development. Here we're talking about the group, setting goals for the group. And when you have a big program, especially if you're all in the same building, it's a little harder when you're spread over many programs over many different districts. But if you have one program with many classrooms in one building, having them come up with something to work on together and use the strength, knowledge that each other has. You said each gave their best example.
Like
and
their favorite thing.
Their favorite thing and
that
how
the kids love.
that the children love. That was then, how did you individualize for children's individualized needs?
Yeah, we would look at what could you use in an interest center versus what you could use in a small group.
Wonderful, very powerful. So, what data should we use? Okay, so there's qualitative data and there's quantitative data, right? So we're doing a lot of talk about quantitative data, right? We're talking about TS Gold, and we're talking about Eckers. There's probably some out here that are doing class. There's a lot of data that we can pull from various places. But there's also a very powerful tool that instructional leaders use, and that is the qualitative data in an observation of the classroom. You alluded to one earlier where you made an observation in a classroom and you just made notes of what you observed. Another one that we alluded to is taking a look at a video. Just taking a look at a video. There's no numbers there, but it's a reality, right? And it tells you something. So using both qualitative and quantitative data, let's see, I don't want to be quite done with that. When you use that data to look at it in a strengths-based way. So use that data and find the excellence in practice and build upon it. And I think that's very much what you just described. Because you described the teachers assessing what needed to be worked on, and then each bringing to the table their very best example that worked for them and the children. And so that's very strengths-based. So that's just beautiful. Okay.
So these are just some examples that we have used as our data, or when we're gathering information, obviously. The CQUIP, the teacher and the paraprofessionals needs assessment. This started with Cindy. The program that Cindy used with us was called Torch when we were in our coaching cycle. And the teachers would go on and they had different areas that they would rate themselves in, comparing apples to apples in how they felt with other teachers, about their environment, about professional development. We took that to the next level. We wanted to make it 2, 3, 4-fold. We wanted to use it in more ways than one. So it's kind of linked to our professional development survey that everybody has to complete every year. As teachers, at the beginning of the year, the new teachers, we wanted to see where do they need help with, what do they need training with, what can we provide to them quickly that they can use as a reference or an information sheet. If they wanted help with ECHRS, we can provide Cindy's on-demand ECHRS training. If they wanted ELS, we could provide them with the on-demand video trainings on the ELS website, different things like that. So that teacher and paraprofessionals need survey is something that we created on our own. Depending on what data you need, tailor your needs to the data that you collect also. You know, if you know that how your CQIP's gonna come out and where you need that quality improvement, go ahead and tailor your needs to that. We learned quickly with the teacher and paraprofessional needs assessment, Amy kind of touched on this, one of the options that we removed was, I do not feel like I need improvement in this area. We had that on every area, and you get a lot of veteran teachers that just go click, 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 click. So that was no longer an option. We took that one off and said, no, you need something somewhere with something. So previous compliance visits, that will be where we are. We just got through with our monitoring visits of 34 classrooms this year, so that was a task checked off our list. And then once we get those scores back, hopefully we get them back prior to our end of the year meeting that we have, where we have 100+ teachers and paraprofessionals in the same room. We hope to have those scores back so we can review that and do a lot of professional development with that.
So can I pause? So you partner with, you take that data and then you partner with the teachers with that overall data so they can be part of the process for setting that CQIP. So that they're hearing the teacher's voice, because that CQIP informs you what you're going to be focusing on at the start of the next school year. So having the teachers a part of the process when you're doing your CQIP is really important, and I think that helps really empower the teacher to know where she's going, and the instructional leader for how she's going to help lead professional development, that job-embedded professional development the next year. And this is just a little side note, if you get your monitor report back too late in the year, which could happen, it's probably happened to you before, it's happened to me, you can call your ISBE consultant and ask for an extension. Back in my former life, when I was a daycare center director and we had to get our CQIPs in and it was May and the PFAE teacher was gone for the summer, we were just told we had to get her done, so we just turned it in. Do you think that provided for any meaningful professional change in the next school year? Zero. It's not meaningful if the teacher is not a part of the process. The teacher has to be in there and helping make those decisions, and informs the professional development, especially job-embedded professional development for the next year. So that was just my little, sorry, soapbox.
No, you're fine.
Yes?
How did you include the teachers in the process of this CQIP?
How do you include the
Yeah,
teachers?
how did you-
I'm going to let you answer that first, because
So
you guys have done that.
we will get, when our administrator gets the results, she's going to go through and she's going to plug them into her spreadsheet. We have got what the previous years and how that teacher scored, or how that site specific scored. We'll compare them to the monitor that we had. We'll compare them, we'll break them down by instructional coach and see, Amy or I, which one of this is the worst. No, just kidding. Then we'll kind of use that data, we'll bring them together, we'll have them look at their scores. One of the things that we do is at the end of the year, they're given a wish list opportunity to fill out what needs do you need for your classroom that's not consumables. So do you need new block people? Do you need new cars? Do you need new cardboard blocks, different things like that? They have to take their ECHRS report, and if they got dinged on a specific item, they have to either purchase new or replace that item. So that's one of the things, how we do it. We try to pair them by site. Different things like playgrounds, cubbies, lockers, we know that it is what it is with some of those things, so we can't change everything. How else, Amy, do we use our Ecker scores?
We do general conversation too. It's different for us because our classrooms are not under one building. So we do have a class site that has 4 classrooms, so we will get them together, look at the 4 of their scores together, and collaborate with them. We also try to pair like districts that are close together and have them collaborate. What do you guys need? What do you see? What needs change? What professional development do we need? That kind of thing. But we come together as a group for a whole day. But we're spread out.
We were very intentional this year about what questions did the monitors ask? Were there any questions that differed from things that they've asked in the past? After you got done with your monitoring visit, we want you to go back and we want you to take notes. How many kids were you missing? Was there anything that you are going to remember that you didn't do that you should have done? Anything that the monitor said, like we wanted them to remember as much about their visit as they could, so when they get their report, they could go back and say, oh, well, I did that, they didn't see me do it, blah, blah, blah. Like we wanted them to really be intentional about the things that they remembered, so we can use that for next time also.
So what I'm hearing from what they've shared is really about letting each individual teacher look at her data, but also developing teams. So when you get that report, you get the individual reports, you also get the overall, the front page that gives you the overall reports, and then you go into Eckers and you choose 5. You're going to choose 5 that score under a 5, is that right? And you're going to choose those, and if you want to do that within your program, but you have multiple sites, so yours is a little different because they have to do it for every site. They don't, so because they're so widespread out. But if you are a program that has multiple classrooms in one building, you're doing those 5 for your site. Does that make sense?
It does. For a new program administrator or for an admin to the building, is there a system listings inside of ISB where we go and get that from? Where do we find our Eckert score from previous years? Who has that?
You can call your ISBE consultant. You should have access to that. It is somewhere. Even ask your teachers. I bet your teachers have copies of it. Because teachers typically keep those things. And then if not, certainly you can get them from your ISBE consultant. That's where I would refer you. So, anybody else want to add anything else to the CQUIP conversation?
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Because you had said that goals that are based on things you score below a 5. What if over the years you want to address them and you don't?
Okay, so now you're talking about your year 2, your year 3.
Yeah.
I think we're going to address that later in here, but just briefly, you are required to do a self-assessment. You don't have to use your Eckers score absolutely that first year. You have to use that for your CQUIP for year 1. But you know what? Your next year you might have a different teacher. There might be different needs for that teacher, so you should do a self-assessment. You can use use Eckers yourself as a self-assessment tool so that you are really addressing what is meaningful. And look at what those priorities are on the sheet that guides you, that's on the website. But sometimes in year 2, you have to do the same thing over because it was your update is unsuccessful because the teacher left. And I got a new teacher, and so we didn't get anywhere on this. And we really do, I still want to work on it. So it might look almost the same in the second year. And sometimes the conversation with your ISBE consultant is your friend. They really want excellence in your classroom. They really do. They don't tattle on you, they support you. They really want you to do what's best. All right.
So after looking at all this data, building relationships, we're finally going to set the goal. You're going to develop that goal as an instructional leader or an admin if you don't have one. You're going to work together to set that goal. And as Wendy mentioned, what you think a goal should be may not be what they're thinking it should be. I encourage you to go with theirs, use the wondering statements, and they might shift to what you're thinking. You could definitely sway them with, I'm wondering if you looked at this, could you do this? It's all based on that wondering statement. We kind of talked about all of this. You lead them to what you want. It's
Yes.
all in how you phrase it. You got to get them to buy in.
That
Get them
buy-in
to
is
think,
so
oh yeah,
important.
I
They have
didn't
to
see
take
this.
ownership, right?
Yes, yep.
That was
it-
really hard for me. Really hard for me, because as a teacher, I wanted somebody to come in and tell me exactly what I was doing wrong in the moment. Like, if you see something, I don't want to guess at it. Like, I want to know how I can solve it. So having, like, Cindy even, she had to interrupt me a couple times on Zoom because I would just tell the teacher, the answer is that, like, she wants to know this. Like, don't make your large group that long. Like, Cindy's like, oh, Wendy, let's wait a minute. So, all right, yeah, but.
And practice the pause. Like, throw out your wondering statement and then wait for them to think about it.
It's hard to pause when
It's
you
hard to
think
pause.
you see solutionitis. Solutionitis, we like to just think of the solutions and just tell them what needs to be done, and it's really best to allow them the empowerment of taking ownership, because it really creates a more deep change in who they are as a teacher. They embrace it, it becomes part of their own teaching, which is what needs to happen.
And if you start using the wondering statements with setting goals, you're going to do it in everyday
She
conversation.
does it all the time. I'm wondering if we should go here for something. I'm like, Amy, just pick where we want to go eat. She did it last night.
This is some real data from back when I'm sorry, go ahead, with your question.
Do you train people, employees? Can we send someone to you for you to train?
I don't think anybody's ever been sent to me, but we can talk later. I mean, I do
Do you consult?
some things. I don't solve problems. I do not solve problems. No, we can talk, but I'm not sure what you're thinking. Okay. So this is real data here. This is the teacher that I was the instructional leader for. She was an amazing teacher. She was just amazing. And she was so angry about this score on item 16, becoming familiar with print, because literacy was her thing, and she was angry. Do you think she had the right to be angry?
Yes.
Data is data. Wait a minute, look at all the green, guys. Look at all the green. So administrators, when you look at that report printed in color, look it on your screen in color. Look at the green. Oh my gosh, look what a powerful, excellent teacher she is. You know, what's 5.2? I think that's on the next one. It's about becoming familiar with print and helping them know why we use it. She never demonstrated why we use it. That was not observed. Should that be something that's part of her practice? Do you think sometimes it probably was, but now she has an opportunity to think more deeply about that. She has an opportunity to think, okay, how can I embed this excellence? So instead of thinking of Eckers as the ding marks, it's really just data pointing to something to think more deeply about. So I made this slide in honor of another instructional leader who I would like to come tell this story herself, but she's not here. Her name is Piera, and I have been her program support specialist for many, many, many years. And this is something she does for her teachers, and it's powerful. So you take that data, we're just picking one for the sake of time, and now she's sitting with the teacher and they're making a goal. The goal is what will the students benefit? Students will, or child will. Students will become more familiar with print and why we use it. That's her goal. And then the teacher sets that goal and Pierre says, let's think about how that particular goal crosses over excellence. She takes a look at Eckers, and we all know that's Eckers 16 because that's where the CQUIP thing was, the Eckers monitor report thing was. So it impacts the it impacts the CQUIP in year 1, and then in year 2 and 3, one might do this is a note to me to remind you that your question about what do you do the next year, you could use ACRS as a self-assessment tool so that you're focusing on what's really important. Then she's going to take it to IELDS, and she's going to attach it to Learning Standard 5B. She goes in and she photocopies it. She has a binder. She puts, here's your goal, here's how it relates to our CQUIP, here's how it relates to IELDS, here's how they do pyramid model there, here's how it relates to Teapot. She copies that page out of Teapot, she puts that in there. And then she goes to Teaching Strategies Gold, because that's what they use and for their assessment tool, and she copies that page out of there. And she puts it all in there. So now what did she just do for her teachers? That one little ding now does what? It crosses over all that we do. Everything is always siloed. Here's our assessment tool. Here's our Teapot data because we're doing pyramid. Here's our CQUIP because, yeah, state wants us to turn that in. But now look what she's done. She's connected it all together. That's so powerful for the teacher because it connects the dots. Everything is all of a piece. It's not all siloed like we think about it. Okay, we're on time for table discussion. I think it's going to be shorter because we're a little bit behind time, but this is another opportunity for you to share with your neighbor, and then we'll have some sharing out because I really want to learn from your own excellence. How does your program use data to inform professional development? How might teaching teams use data to inform goal setting? And then we'll just popcorn out again like we did last time. I'm going to only give you 2 minutes this time because we're a little behind. Go ahead. All right. All right, so I'm looking back out at you and I'm wondering, how does your program use data to inform PD, or how might teaching teams use? You can answer each one of those or a combination thereof. Somebody share some excellence that you've got happening in your program. Any excellence that you'd like to share with us, some excellence in using data to inform goal setting or professional development. Yes.
Sure, Mike. I send out I call it a quiz through Gmail to all of my staff, and I ask the questions, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what kind of PD would you like to see, several different questions. And then once they respond, I get an email that says that they've answered, I print it, I put it in their employee file, and then when it's time for evaluation time, I pull it back out, and I go over their strengths and weaknesses with them and also what PD they would want, and then I compile the PD from all of my employees into what our next year's PD will be.
Nice. So then you take a look at overall, see if there's a trend in there that can kind of inform maybe a program-wide initiative. Very nice. So intentionally gathering data from the people who are most impacted by the professional development that you provide. That's wonderful. Anyone else? Yes, please.
I do it kind of more embedded only because we're a PLC district, we're a school district. But I look at how the kids are mastering the different domains, and then I use, like, if kids aren't mastering, I don't know, let's just say like counting, 20, let's say 20C. And if we're not up to 80% of our kids' mastery, then we really focus on that. And then, like, during our PLC meeting, we'll do some professional learning around that. I like to call it professional learning instead of professional development. So we'll do professional learning around that specific strategies and say, okay, like, what are you doing that's working? Here's some more information. Now go back and try it. And then we come back to the table and say, you know, what worked, what didn't work? How are the kids doing now? So it's more like embedded in just kind of how the kids are doing.
Nice.
Is where I provide the professional learning opportunities.
That is wonderful. So you're using student data to inform where you want to build professional development within the early childhood community there. It's all the PFA and PFAE programs there.
Yeah.
That is wonderful.
And they do like that individual professional learning plan that they do at the beginning of the year, and then I have like fireside chat meetings with them.
Nice.
On their own, but I think the embedded piece is really like, how is it really impacting the kids in the classroom, and that's where I need to kind of fill in some of that unfinished learning.
What she's saying is reminding me of a tool that's on the ISBE website that I really wanna, if you don't know that it's there, it's so helpful when you're trying to plan PD. Okay, so you go on to isbe.net, y'all know how to do that. You go to early childhood, y'all know how to do that. Go to PFA, even if you're PFAE, go to PFA. Then go to, there's those blue ribbons there, and I'm about 90% sure I'm telling you the right ribbon, the one that says monitoring and continuous quality improvement, I think is what that ribbon is called, if I'm remembering it's close to that. Okay, go on there, and then scroll down. You're going to see a resource that is professional development resource that gives you a whole list. It goes Ecker's item by Ecker's item by Ecker's item and gives you a hot link to go to a professional development. It's an article. It's either an article or it's to something on the EC Learning website. It takes you to a piece that you can use for your professional development. And some of it is absolutely excellent. In a different training, that slide that with item 16 that I just showed you earlier, the item 16 one on there has an article that is about print that is awesome, that I really do like using with teachers. Anybody else want to share an excellence? Thank you for that, and thank you for yours, Louise. Anybody else want to share an excellence?
All right, so step 4 is going to be called the action plan or your roadmap. It's going to outline the goal. It's going to outline the evidence that the teacher submits. It's going to outline the dates in which they submit that evidence. It's going to outline specific steps to reach that goal. And this is what you're going to use to guide those discussions.
You want to look at that form? Does that help?
Yep. So this is similar. Amy and I created our own action plan because we're a Google school, if you will. So we just created a form in Google. That way we can share it with the teacher. The teacher can make a copy of it to associate with what goal we're working on. And then they submit that back to us or let us know that it's complete. And we can talk about this and walk through it. So then the implementation is going to be where you're going to review all of that evidence. So if they've submitted a video, if they've taken pictures of different things that they've hung up in the classroom or children's work or different steps in the process, this is where you're going to look at that data and decide, have they achieved the goal? Do we need to go back and revise the goal? Do we need to move on? Do we need to rethink the whole thing and kind of not start over, but maybe take a different vantage point and look at where they're coming from? And then as far as monitoring the progress, these kind of overlap. This is where you can, again, bring in those I'm wondering statements, reflective conversations, tell me what worked, tell me what didn't work, tell me why you're frustrated, tell me why you don't think you were able to achieve the goal, different things like that.
So now I really want to take a minute to let these two, they've alluded to the work that we've done together, where I coached them as instructional leaders. They had one teacher that allowed herself to be the guinea pig, and then they came and they were like just bird's eye watching the whole thing unfold, and it was a powerful experience, and I think it's worth sharing. So we have a couple slides here, and I'm going to let them tell their story.
So after coaching with Cindy, we did have a mindset shift. So the first one, be an encourager for the teachers. We always encourage them. It's not that we didn't, but recognize excellences often. We all want to hear the good things that we are doing. And that also helps to build your relationships. Even if it's just a check-in briefly in the morning, you're like, hey, I really like how you did this, or I like how you did that. I noticed the students were really engaged when you were doing this. So just make sure that you are recognizing those excellences and be specific with it, not just, hey, doing a great job, and move on. Like, be very specific and intentional with that. Mentoring new teachers, obviously we told you we have 34 classrooms. It's really hard to get to each site when you have a new teacher or a teacher within 2, 3, 4 years. So we have paired new teachers with another teacher in a different district that have similar teaching styles. And that has really helped. We actually paired 2 teachers that were an hour apart from each other, but it was awesome. They both loved it. The new teacher loved the mentor loved leading that teacher, and so that really worked well.
So can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So did you get subs? How did you do that?
So they did a lot of Zoom meetings. They did a lot of emailing, texting, phone calls. They had the same prep time, the same 2 hours in between classrooms, so they were able to do that. And they did do some evenings when they were at home, after their kids were in bed. They're like, hey, how's this going? Or if she had a question doing lesson plans or whatever it was, they would just pop on, and they established that relationship. Be like, hey, you can text me anytime from here to here. They set those boundaries, and it really was amazing to see. And that helped us also, that we didn't have to constantly be in one place all the time.
Can I just put it one more place? So how powerful was that for that mentor teacher? How empowering is that, and relationship building that whole thing is? I mean, that's just, to me, it gives me goosebumps. Go ahead, sorry.
Teaching styles was big. Like, you can't just pair any teacher with any new teacher. You've got to make sure that their beliefs are the same, their teaching styles are the same, because that's really what motivates them. And I was skeptical of this at first, because the new teacher was just giving her lesson plans at first. Here, just use mine. But she got used to looking at those lesson plans, the way that teacher typed them out, her intentionality behind everything, and it really did work. Instead of copying them year after year, after she got her feet wet, she got her confidence built up, she was used to writing those lesson plans in a specific format. So keep those things in mind too.
And then the next one, we've already talked about data a lot, so I'm going to move on from there. Encourage the teachers to remember why we do things. A lot of times in Eckers, we're like, why do we have to do this? And really think about, what is the why? And once they understand the why, they're more easily able to comply to it, I think. Obviously, we advocate for best practice. We teach all that. Problem solving with the teachers rather than for the teachers. We used to just go in and put out fires constantly. That's pretty much what we did. And then once we got them involved in it, using the wondering statements, that really helped. Using resources like Cindy, that really helped us too. Yep. Let's see, evaluate classrooms for the quality indicators. We now go in at the beginning of the year, we help them set up their classrooms, we look at Eckers, make sure they've seen the Eckers video. We team with them, look at your environment. Is it set up Eckers appropriately? Rather than us going in and be like, okay, you need to move this, you need to move this needs to go here. Really pull out that book and be like, okay, this says this, so how do you think you can change that in your room?
That is where we have found, because more times than not, the goals that teachers are creating are going to be about, take a wild guess. If you have a teacher, what are teachers right now struggling with? Challenging behaviors. Yes. So 9 times out of 10, we're getting challenging behaviors goals from our teachers. And we have found that 80 to 85% of those goals can be changed with the environment. We have learned that more centers and less students are better than bigger student centers that allow more students to play there. You guys might have had that figured out already, but that was just one thing that we kind of learned from that. So really, like Amy said, us just not going in and saying, okay, you don't have enough centers in here. Like, what does the documentation say? What does the research say? What does your curriculum say? And get them into the book to physically look for the answer.
We talked about the professional development, reviewing goals with teachers frequently. Like, how are you doing with your goal? What can I do to help you? What do you need? Always have a goal in mind. And then we deliver snack monthly for all 34 classrooms. It's a little crazy, but that's an easy way to start your relationships at the beginning of the year. Here's your snack. How are things going? And it's an easy way throughout the whole year. Be like, oh, here's your snack. How's things going? What can we do for you? And our big mantra is connect rather than correct. So you want to connect with them rather than constantly correcting them. You need to do this, you need to do that. Because let's be real, none of us like to be told what to do, right? So you just gotta get them to your way of thinking.